I am spiritual. I believe in a God. I believe in a higher power. I pray. I say amen, but I'm not really sure like how I land where I land. My mom is Christian. I was raised Christian. And then I think I grew out of it and just became a little bit more curious about the world.
But you know, Logan, you and Jesus are, I think, a little closer than you might realize.
But isn't intolerance sort of rooted in Christianity a bit?
Okay, great question. This is a matter of truth. If I say to you, every religion leads to God, is that a truth claim?
No.
I would argue yes.
Logan Paul just had on Cliffe and Stewart from the Ask Cliffe YouTube channel. They talked for about 2.5 hours. In this video, I'm breaking that huge conversation down into 7 Q&A pieces. These clips are going to move very quickly, and you'll notice a trajectory to this conversation as it develops. The first question asked is, how can Christianity be true when Christians have done such terrible things in history?
America is great when America follows Christ. America gets real ugly real fast when it does not follow Christ. Same with the church. When the church follows Jesus Christ, it's a beautiful thing. And when it does not follow Christ, and there are sadly too many examples of that, it turns tragic and ugly real fast.
How does that not put a stain, at least on some parts of, I guess, just religion in general?
It does put a stain. You're absolutely right, Logan. But now the challenge is, look at our African-American followers of Christ. They have grandparents and great-grandparents who were enslaved by white Christians, unquote. How hypocritical. And yet our African-American brothers and sisters have not given white Christian racists the power to turn them off to the true Christ, who did not have a racist bone in his body.
Frank Turek has an amazing quote that hammers this point home. He says, "Newsflash, Christianity is not Christians. Christianity is Jesus. When someone plays Beethoven poorly, who do you blame? Do you blame Beethoven or do you blame the player?"
In those paradoxical moments, like Sandy Hook, or the slave ownership that you talked about, what do you think God is trying to teach us in moments like that, and how, for non-believers who ask, like, how are moments like that even possible in a world where God exists?
Great question, Stuart.
You got to start with it's a sin issue. Do you know what I mean? That's got to be up front. If Genesis chapter 3 talks about a great fall and great breakdown, that cracked the door wide open for any type of entropy to occur. If there is no God, then there is no ultimate moral obligation. There is no type of immaterial out there. It's just all material, like we're sitting on a couch right now. And the immaterial information that we're speaking, well, that's a type of spirituality involved. So what is the alternative is my question. Why is it so wrong if there is no God? Because everybody brings up this word evil with Sandy Hook. Well, that's a religious term. If you don't believe in God, what is evil? That term doesn't even make any sense. You have to have God to have evil because it ushers in moral obligation. This is really right. This is really wrong. Next, I would say that we have a suffering servant. I think you're a Christian, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, we worship the only God who claims to suffer with us and historically suffered himself in the worst way imaginable, physically and spiritually on that cross. And then lastly, what are you going to turn to? We're at the beds of those who are suffering all the time. We just had a funeral last night. We performed. And if you're an atheist and you go in there, it's just like, tough luck, life ends. Just accept it, naturalize it. It's totally normal.
That's scary.
Yeah. Versus, look, there's eternity out there and we all want that. Now the question is there evidence for it?
In other words, apart from God, we can neither adequately explain evil nor find any solution that is ultimate to it. There's no hope of wrongs being righted or justice being served in any lasting sense. Without God, things are as they are. Evil is just a word we use for matter in motion that breaks our hearts. But without God, even that broken heart itself is reduced down to something chemical. Let's dive back in.
Have you ever been challenged with some sort of scientific explanation about what happens after you die? I have a theory, but I'd like that answer.
I'm big on NDEs. I think you're a little slower on near-death experiences.
What are NDEs?
Is it something you sign so that you can't talk about your experience?
Yeah, basically.
NDAs.
So the near-death experiences, it's you basically pass into unconsciousness. You're flatlined.
Yep.
But Duke has done this comprehensive study, which is crazy. Like, again, I thought NDEs were just ridiculous early on. But now there's like 300 peer-reviewed articles where someone has left their body,
Yep.
they've flatlined,
Yep.
and they've actually gone down the hall and read a medical chart. Then they revive and explain exactly what that chart says.
Yep.
And this is a Duke.
Yep.
Man. This is not like, some
Near-death
hokey
experiences.
pokey. Exactly.
Documented near-death experiences that are fascinating, where people often
Right.
describe a similar experience.
What is the
Yeah.
when you say similar? What is the commonality between the multitudes of those NDEs that have happened?
I think the commonality is leaving your body, a floating experience. That's typically what they say, right?
That's often pleasant, extremely pleasant.
Yes.
This just sounds
Meeting
like
of light.
Just sounds like acid.
Right, it does.
Basically.
DMT.
Yeah.
That sounds
I had a very unpleasant acid trip.
And then there's some type of a common agreement over what was seen if two people were in the room.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've heard more as well.
I just watched the what is it, like a unexplained William Shatner near-death experiences on Netflix. I think. But no, it's fascinating, and I believe there's also a study that was conducted where there was like an observable amount of energy that leaves the body after someone passes away. Is that the soul potentially? Right? Because energy can neither be created or destroyed. There's a finite amount in the universe, traceable. I mean, that's at least what the science I've been told says.
Right.
You can see here his openness to life after death, to the spiritual realm, but you can also see how he's not really sure what part of a human is that immaterial part. So in his next question here, they get into the soul. What is the soul?
People say, oh, you have no soul, or like it's in your soul, or, say it with your soul. What does that mean to you guys?
Well, the soul is the person. The soul is the real you, the real me.
At the point in which they are presently?
Mm-hmm. You have a soul, I believe. I have a soul. We all have souls, which means we have personhood, which means you're not just a complex biochemical reaction. I mean, think about it. If there is no God, you and I are simply robots.
Flesh puppets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all we are.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating to listen to an atheist, a secularist, a materialist insist, oh, no, there's more to us than that. Really? Sorry. If there is no creator who creates us, then we are matter and energy evolved to a higher order. That's good to hard science, which means there's no soul, there's no you, there's no me. There's a complex chemical reaction in our brains that we call ourselves, but that's an illusion because the real you is simply a chemical reaction. Now, my experience of life says that's baloney. My experience of life says there is a real you. That's why I hold you responsible for the way you treat your mother, your friend, because I don't think you have to do what you do because you've been chemically programmed. Instead, you're a human being created in the image of God with a soul, which means a free will, the ability to love or to hate, the ability to forgive or seek revenge. You have a rational mind. You don't have to think a certain way. You don't have to believe something. You choose to. Well, the only way that can be real is if there is more to you than your complex chemical reactions. There's got to be a soul, a you, a me.
Cliffe answers, when the church follows Christ, it's a beautiful thing. And when it doesn't follow Christ, it turns tragic and ugly. Now, this is one of the biggest personal reasons that I believe people have for either leaving Christianity or not wanting to join Christianity or follow Christ is because of hypocrisy. We have to be able to separate the two and understand that this is the likeness of Christ and this is not the likeness of Christ. But unfortunately, fallen man fails to be able to decipher and logically reason to these certain conclusions that this is what this is and this is what this is not. Now, the last thing I want to say is I really like the way that Cliffe's son answered the question as it relates to the problem of suffering. The suffering servant, the Messiah who came to bear with our infirmities and with our weaknesses. And even further, I would say that God is not the one that is causing the suffering. Rather, it is the sin within man's fallen heart that is causing the suffering. And what we do is we do see God using suffering to bring about something out of that suffering that we could have never expected. For instance, the story of Joseph, where he was sold into slavery by his brothers. He was falsely accused of rape and imprisoned for many, many years, yet God took this horrible situation that he was in, and God specifically said what the enemy meant for evil, God turned it around and meant it and used it for good. And lastly, another example is the early church persecution. Yeah, it was horrible that the church was persecuted and killed in so many ways, but how did God use that persecution? Well, the gospel spread out because the early Christians had to flee because of the persecution. So we have people who were killed and immediately with Christ in heaven, and others who were able to flee the persecution and bring others to the salvation and the knowledge of Jesus Christ. With that being said, I pray that you would adhere your mind, your body, your spirit, and your soul to the realization that it needs Christ. You need Christ. He is the only way, the truth, and the life, and he loves you. He died on the cross to save you and to have a relationship with you and to show you how and why you can have a confident trust in him. With that being said, have a blessed day.